All right, so I modified the clutch tool, so it's actually two pieces. First, there's the bit that we welded up last winter to hold the input shaft. Oh, I guess I cut myself. And then I just got this today. And this is a little handle for holding onto the transmission because the spec is 300 to 550 pounds. My torque wrench shouldn't go that high, and I wasn't buying the one from Harbor Freight for $400. I shit you not, it was $400. So anyhow, I now have a way to tighten that, or to hold the transmission from moving. Well, there's cows. Look at those cows. Cows! It's hard to be an intellectual. Oh. Well, the sewer's still chilling. Anyhow, so, yeah, I fastened it, and, well, it just keeps going. I figure this ought to be enough leverage to hold against the torquing. Yeah, my big torque wrench only goes to 250. Yeah, you can see it there, 250. There, that's 225, there's 250, something like that. So I think what we'll do is we'll go to like 250 and then we'll check the preload. Oh, this is the beam type torque wrench that I was using earlier. It cost me $32 today. Not cheap, but I measured it on the inch pounds and it went to like 5 or 5.5. So what we need to do is go ahead and torque it to that 250 measurement. And then put the lever in neutral, rotate the output shaft a bunch of times, and then check the tension with this beam torque wrench. Then subtract the two values, and the difference between the initial reading and the final reading needs to be LBF. What's an LBF? Pound feet? Pounds times feet? I don't know. I think it's 4 to 12 inch pounds difference. So we got 5 to 5.5, and we're looking for the difference of 4 to 12. So if you over torque it, you have to get a new spacer. It's just like a differential when you're setting preload on the bearings, on the pinion bearings, if it's got a crush sleeve in there. Once we get this guy torqued, then we're going to stake the nut, and then we can install the rear cover with some form-in-place gasket, some RTV, room temperature vulcanizing form-in-place gasket maker, and then we'll tighten everything down to 13 foot-pounds, and that should be about it. We'll install the shift lever housing. But I don't know if I'm thinking about this backwards, but the shift lever, it pivots on a ball when it's in here. So over and up, because this is towards the front of the transmission, right? So this is 5th gear, I'm pretty sure, because I went over and up like this, which if it pivots, right, would be like back, down and back. No, that's 6th. So I guess if you come up towards me and I'm tilted this way, then it would cantilever back there. So, well, I'll put it in 5th. So looking towards the front of the vehicle, over and up for 5th, because it's 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. So if it's the L shape up, like that, then we have to go over and back, because again, it pivots on that ball. So you go over, which would pivot, like imagine the middle of my forearm is the pivot ball, and then you go like that. So when you're in 5th gear up here, you're pushed over and back, as we are here. We're in gear now. So you can see this sucker's locked tight. And then if I'm going to be torquing in this direction, that will mean that somebody simply has to hold on the end of this chunk of angle iron. And we'll see how successful this is. They might choke up to like right here or something, but I think this will be plenty strong to at least get an initial torque reading on the transmission. I'm gonna go to like 200 and then put it in neutral, turn it a bunch of times, and then go from there, maybe like 150, because I really don't want to have to fuck with a new crush sleeve. The other thing that you can do if you're really in a pinch is shim the crush sleeve out. But you've got to know exactly what thickness shims you need, and at that point you're better off just getting a new crush sleeve. I don't recommend it. I mean, you can do it that way, but yeah, kind of sketch. So okay, so you want to strap the transmission to the bench, and then I took my big torque wrench and went to 250 pounds. That reduced the bearing preload from 5.5 inch pounds to 2.5 inch pounds or 2 inch pounds. So now what I'm going to do is I have a 3/4 inch breaker bar with a 3/4 to half adapter, and then I have this chunk of 3-inch black pipe on the end of this breaker bar, and I'm going to go, you know, little increments, you know, 32nd, 16th of a turn, whatever, just tiny increments, a little bit tighter and a little bit tighter until I get that what was it, 4 to 12 inch pound difference between the initial and the final measurements. So right now, after going to 250, my measurement went down to 2.5 inch pounds on this beam type torque wrench after rotating it 15 times in the clockwise direction. So we're going to be looking for anywhere between 6 and 14 inch pounds of rotational torque. Will be right on the money. This is the final iteration of the tool. I had a 6-inch chunk of 1/8 or 3/16 steel angle iron that I purchased this morning. To that, we welded this chunk of 1/4 inch shitty plate steel as reinforcement after it bent due to the amount of torque that we were applying to it. Additionally, there were 2 washers and a thick nut that we welded to the front of the clutch housing here. After these 2 brackets sheared, they sheared on there. This guy is welded on the back, and then this is welded to this on the top and the bottom. This was a good bit of welding. My former boss did that. It held pretty well. In the end, I ended up using the Milwaukee impact gun to secure the nut into place and to establish torque, because it kept being a pain in the rear end. But now with our beam type torque wrench, and the original torque setting at roughly 5 pounds, which went down to 2 pounds after we started tightening it. The turning torque is now up to sometimes 18, as you saw there. Come on, honey. And sometimes it's right there in the middle at about 12 or 14. So I think the bearing needs to get seated a little bit better. I'm going to keep turning it by hand. But I guess it was a success. This is turning everything in neutral. My shitty socket started to round out. Actually, with the 3/4 to 1/2 inch adapter here, what I was thinking is if this hole rounded out, what I was going to do is take my 12-point impact socket right over there and weld it to the top here. Well, grind this flat, get all the paint off, and then weld that all the way around. And do a couple passes. Do one weld, and then weld up around the bottom, and then do weld up top. And then use it again as an impact socket. But we didn't end up needing to do that. Neutral. So the next step in this saga, and yeah, it's meaningfully more difficult to turn, but this took probably from the time that I first tightened down, I got to 250 pounds with my big torque wrench. This probably took a rotation and a half or 2 full rotations of the nut to get all the crush out of the sleeve. And I think I showed you that crush sleeve where the side profile looks like that, there's the front of the crush sleeve, and you're kind of looking at it on the side, and then it's got that hump in the middle, and that hump is what crushes down. So now that we've taken all of the slack out of that and actually have some preload on the bearings, you're going to want to turn it over after every time you do this. And like, I was just rattling it with the gun, like, and then I'd test it, and then test it, right? Because you don't want to just go super strong on it. That can crush the sleeve way too much, way too quickly, and then you have to take it apart and get a new sleeve. Take your time, go slow. Next thing's next. I already brake cleaned this off, so we're going to take some form in place room temperature vulcanizing gasket maker and install the rear case cover, as it's called. And then I'm probably going to go home. I might do something else. Our number 2 measurement is anywhere between 11 pounds and 19 pounds, 18 pounds. So I don't know. I'm just going to keep turning it and see. But yeah, 303 to 554. I don't have a wrench that goes that big. There was one at Harbor Freight for fucking $400. So I was like, I'm not doing that. And then that's your spec. 4 to 12 pounds difference. We're right at the top end of that. We're going to do a large preload, replace the spacer, just like I was saying. So go ahead and shove those there. I think that's where those go. Oh yeah, we need to stake the output shaft adjustment nut. We're going to use a chisel to do that. So you can see this nut has been used before. Somebody staked it right there, and they staked it right here. And I'm going to go ahead and stake right here and right here with my large drift, wherever that is, right here. This guy and this ball peen hammer. Here's the nut staked. As you can see, it's staked on both sides. Keep it from backing off. Backing off generally isn't an issue with something like this. I did not put any thread locking compound on this. Here is yet another view of the tool. As you can see, it's welded here. Just shitty and boogered, but it doesn't have to be anything special. And then it's welded on the underside here. And we welded where it's sheared up on here and then here, because there's this chunk of strap that run up on underneath. And it's welded right in here to the chunk of angle iron. The flat is to the angle iron. And then you can see the nut and the washers in there are welded to the strap as well as to the collar where this friction plate rides on the clutch surface, or on the input shaft rather. So that's that. Clean up the shmoo on the inside of the bell housing with 2 bolts away, and then we'll keep on trucking. Blue thread lock has been applied to the tips of all 4 bolts, just a small amount. Now I'm going to take the caulk gun and apply a thin bead, as you can see, of room temperature vulcanizing form in place gasket maker to the rear case cover. And we're going to put it on and let it cure overnight. Just like so. There's only one way that this clocks in. You'll note that this divot right here faces upward in the transmission. And that ear is kind of deformed downwards compared to the other holes. I think there's a couple dowel pins. I'm going to go ahead and grab my my plastic hammer, tap it on, and then install these bolts. Let's go take a look at what the torque spec is for each of these. 13 foot-pounds, which would be 13 times 12, 144, and 12 is 156 inch-pounds, which is more than my little bar wrench here goes. So we'll go ahead and just torque them down by hand, and then let it cure overnight, because I want to be able to get this thing in tomorrow, and heck, maybe put some fluid in it. Although I still have to deal with the transfer case. You can see it's dark on the back there, it's leaking, especially when the vent is kind of screwed up in it. So go ahead and make sure the vent's clear, and go from there. All right, as you can see, We have some RTV pooching out here. Again, I only put a 1/8 inch bead on there, but you don't need a lot. So it is now clamped into place. Gonna make sure that everything still turns by, I don't know, screwdriver or something here. Yeah, output still turns. Great. Again, there's only the one way that it can fit in. As you can see down here, there's this protrusion that aligns with this guy. I'm pretty sure this lines up with this. And then this dent right here lines up with the top of the tranny. Now it is ready to be put in. We just got to lube up and install the throwout bearing and clutch release fork components into the bell housing of the transmission, and then clean up this transfer case and figure out why that output seal is leaking. I think that was the second output seal I put in it, and cleaned everything up here. And then tomorrow I'm going to go through, install the drain plug at the very least, and all of these bits of hardware came off of the transmission. So yeah, we'll get those installed. Okay, the last thing that you want to do is put your shifter on, and then I can't put it in reverse with one hand, but make sure that it goes into all the gears. I held my fingers here, the output, and turned the input with my left hand, and I felt the gear reductions, and then the one-to-one direct drive went over, coming through the transmission, as well as reverse worked. Neutral works fine, the output didn't turn, so we're good to put her in. All we're going to do is deal with this and some parts on the floor, and we'll be together.